20 years, won't do an interview. Nobody's ever talked to her, and she's never been interviewed anywhere. And now, understand, I'm not talking about one person. What I just told you applies to 7 people. How they all end up with that. That's part of what you get. I came in this business saying I was gonna expose. When I talked about Michael Jackson, when I talked about R. Kelly, they canceled me for these things because why would you talk about another black dude? Race is not where the line is drawn. It's God's side and the other side. And we don't care nothing about the other side. Period. All of these big dick deviants is all catching hell in 2024. It's up for all of them. It don't matter if you Diddy or whoever you is. TG Jakes, any of them. All lies will be exposed. That's all. And anyone who takes that the wrong way, know why they take it the wrong way. The truth is...
Something about this Netflix Diddy documentary isn't landing right with viewers. It feels like the editing got real selective the second things started turning uncomfortable. And now, Katt Williams is back in the conversation. People are saying he just confirmed what they've been suspecting. The word going around is that 7 major names never made it into the final version the way audiences expected. Not nobodies, big, well-known celebrities. And the reason this is catching fire is because Katt hinted months ago that certain truths were going to come out, but certain circles would still be treated gently. So let's get into why you're here. Katt has been speaking on this Netflix situation, and he's not holding back. He's basically questioning whether the documentary really told the whole story, and suggesting some people were intentionally kept out of the spotlight.
Remember when he went on Club Shay Shay and talked about the truth eventually coming out? People are looking at this rollout now and saying that's exactly what he was pointing to. Here's what we're unpacking in this video. The 7 names people claim were either left out or barely addressed. Why those names may have been handled with extra care, and how their ties to Diddy keep getting discussed even when the documentary doesn't directly name them. And there's another rumor circulating too, that behind the scenes there was pressure over which names could appear and how they would be presented. That's not something we can verify, but it fits a familiar pattern people talk about when stories get too close to powerful circles. Because in this industry, the same thing keeps happening. Some names make it on screen and some don't. And a lot of viewers believe those missing names are exactly why this documentary feels so tightly controlled. Now, let's get into the list. Before we go any further, I'm not doing the lazy move of dragging the most obvious A-list figures into this just for clicks. You already know which superstar names the internet throws into every rumor cycle, and I'm not presenting speculation like it's fact. We're sticking to what's being said publicly and what can actually be discussed without turning this into a fanfiction circus. This really starts back in 2024, when Katt Williams went on Club Shay Shay and dropped what sounded like a warning. He said Diddy thrives in that party lifestyle, and that the smartest skill anyone can have is knowing how to say no. Then he leaned into the bigger message that the truth would come out and the lies would get exposed. At the time, people treated it like entertainment. Now, with everything unfolding, a lot of viewers are looking back thinking maybe Katt wasn't just talking. He also mentioned multiple public figures during that run and framed it as a truth issue, basically saying the people who can't handle the truth usually know exactly why it hits a nerve. Whether you agree or not, it set the tone that something was coming. Fast forward to now. 50 Cent is linked to a Netflix documentary release, Diddy, The Reckoning. And part of the buzz is that it's presented as including behind-the-scenes material from that legal window, plus allegations that go beyond standard celebrity scandal coverage. Once it dropped, the reported
legal pushback came quickly. The talk is that Diddy's team challenged how certain footage was obtained or used and sent formal notices to Netflix claiming it wasn't authorized. Netflix still moved forward, which is why people aren't treating this like just another documentary. They're treating it like a fight over who controls the narrative. Now, I'm not going to lock in exact court details like they're guaranteed, because on...
Say that again. 27 years, 4 years. Meanwhile, they tried to give me 4 years, but 2 blunts I had no intention of smoking in the first place. Same 4 years. I don't give a fuck. Being an ass-kicking devil worshiper is not against the law. They put that man on a whole RICO because they thought he was f***ing for China. They said, bring out the 9 prophets. 9 niggas walked out. That ain't even get too long. Go on and get you found. That man liked this so much as his punishment. They sent him to the place with the most. I ain't finna say.
Online posts get messy and legal situations change. The point is this: the pressure is real, and people believe it's not over. You're seeing massive claims about lawsuits, possible new charges, and serious allegations being thrown around, including mentions involving minors. I'm not repeating those as facts, because that's where things get exaggerated, and it's too serious to handle casually. But what it shows is this: people think the situation could widen, and when a case gets this big, the internet starts searching for a larger web behind it. That's why the leak talk keeps popping up too. Claims about tapes or recordings that could allegedly pull in other celebrities. Again, not confirmed, but it shows how the narrative is shifting from one person to an entire network. And speaking of Katt, he recently made a joke that a lot of people are treating like a quiet confirmation of what he's been hinting at this whole time.
I knew that Snoop Dogg, not again, mentioned him in December of 2020, but everybody beat the hell out of me. Screw you, that can't be true. What the hell do I know, right? And then recently it just came out again that Snoop Dogg got accused of trafficking children. And what did everybody do? Ooh, Snoop Dogg is at the halftime. I'm going to the halftime. But we canceled Dr. Seuss and Jemima. Nobody mad. Nobody. Super Bowl had this. They were dripping down from the letters. The LVI. I know, but that's fine. That's fine. Let's go to the game. Make some hot wings. It's fine. It'll pass. It'll pass, right? It's a phase. It's just a phase. But oh no. Tell somebody that plastic straws are coming back and throw a fit. Let a convict get arrested. Somebody put a knee on a convict's neck and it's over. Neck of it out. Crickets. Crickets. Nothing. Everything's fine.
I get it sounds wild, but the way people are interpreting it, Katt wasn't just telling jokes for entertainment. They're seeing it as him doubling down on the same message he's been repeating. Some parts of the story get exposed, and other parts get quietly shielded. Now, let's get into the 7 names people keep bringing up. First up, Snoop Dogg. Yeah, Snoop. And before anyone twists this, nobody is saying Snoop is guilty of anything here. The reason his name keeps coming up is because he and Diddy have crossed paths for decades. Music, business, events, the same celebrity circles. That kind of long-standing overlap is enough for the internet to start asking questions when a documentary feels selective. So why do people think Snoop wasn't really touched in the documentary? One major reason is a creator named Ali Carter, who's been pushing this angle for years. She's claimed Snoop is more connected and more. And she's been saying this since around 2020. Every time she brings it up, she gets dragged, labeled a liar, told to be quiet, and she keeps going anyway. Now here's where we keep this responsible. Carter has made extremely serious allegations, including claims involving minors. I'm not repeating those accusations as facts. That's not something you put out there without verified evidence. What matters for this video is the reaction pattern people point to. Because the argument online goes like this: if someone were truly radioactive, you'd expect them to lose major platforms, major deals, major stages. But people point out that Snoop still landed massive mainstream moments, including the Super Bowl halftime show, and they use that contrast to argue he's treated differently. To be clear, being booked for a huge event is not proof of wrongdoing. It's just the kind of detail the internet uses to fuel the protected narrative. And then, of course, you get the symbolism crowd. Carter even tried to read meaning into the Super Bowl visuals, the LVI graphics, the staging, the imagery, like it was some hidden message.
Thank you. Come here. Don't sit on the bed at night. No homo. No, just don't get close to the bed. Don't get close. But it's just like, yo, we want to thank you for hosting the thing, man. It's been a pleasure. You didn't have to do it, and you did it.
No. I definitely didn't have to do it. I definitely didn't have to. First and foremost, I'm not getting in the bed. Shout out to him and what he did. I'm just gonna, if we can, let's just put the camera a little this way, just so we're not. I don't want my shot to even I don't want it to come close to the bed at all. I should look like he fresh off goddamn plane. I should.
Fresh off the guard stage. That's my brother right here from day one. We used to wake up and, damn, pause, but like just back in the days when he was like 10 and I was a little bit older, his older brother, we used to fight over the Frosted Flakes. You know what I'm saying? Before pause was invented. You know what I'm saying? But it's my brother for real. We used to actually wrestle off of the Frosted Flakes because he used to always get up early with me. Now he's one of the richest stars in the world. And
What the did Puff just say? Nobody's gonna acknowledge this for me. Puff just said we used to wrestle over the Frosted Flakes, and we're streaming live. That was stupid. Listen, that was fucking stupid. Listen,
we're having a good time, yo. Oh, your usher made it in the. Hey, yo.
Fuck that mic. I'm a thug. At the end of the day, I kill niggas, man. No, listen. At the end of the day, I kill.
That's not evidence, That's interpretation, but it shows how quickly online commentary can turn into a full-blown storyline. So at this point, the real question isn't what's proven. The question is why certain names trigger these conversations and why platforms often avoid them unless everything is airtight. So why do people think 50 didn't go there with Snoop in the documentary? The simplest answer is risk. Snoop is a legacy name with deep industry ties, and if you don't have rock-solid proof and clearance, you don't put that on a major platform. That's why the internet labels certain figures untouchable, not because
For somebody to invite him in, hey, don't do it, okay? We all saw the movie Sinners. Don't let his here so he can bite somebody. So he can bite Playboy Cardi again, okay? Playboy Cardi definitely been bit. Something happened. Playboy Cardi's been bit. I know he has. Nobody let Kanye in. No. Tonight, I will do my part. Everybody will get flowers. I'll do my part to make sure that I put us on a high pedestal, man. Also, I'm gonna do my part. I'm shutting down the idea of after parties. No after parties tonight, okay? None. Take your home after this. That's why I did it on a Monday. People got to go to work tomorrow. No after parties. That's where it's slippery at them after parties. Okay? We're learning a lot about people, ain't we? We're learning a lot. God is good all the time. Kurt, that makes it right. Whatever I just said goes away. Funny.
anything is proven, but because that's how people interpret a careful edit. Now let's move to Kevin Hart, because this one plays out differently. Kevin has been asked about the Diddy situation before, but he's always answered in a measured, controlled way, like he knows one wrong sentence becomes a headline, and people link that cautious tone to his history of being around certain industry spaces.
But what really made people stop and listen was what he stressed next. No after parties tonight. And the timing mattered. A Monday show naturally shuts down the whole stay out all night culture because most people have to be up the next morning. Whether it was comedy, planning, or a subtle message, it didn't feel accidental. Then, like always, the internet tried to twist it into something darker. Orlando Brown has said a lot of extreme things over the years, including claims about Kevin that are explicit and unverified. That allegation is fact. It's the kind of rumor that spreads fast because it's shocking, not because it's proven. So whether you believe Orlando or not, the main takeaway is this. Kevin's jokes started getting replayed like signals, and once the internet decides a joke is a hint, it runs with it. People say Kevin gets handled carefully in these conversations for one main reason. He's been in the industry long enough to know what happens behind closed doors. That doesn't mean he did anything, but it explains why fans assume he's seen more than he'll ever say publicly. And when you're that big of a brand, a documentary isn't going to pull you into unverified chaos unless the receipts are airtight. That's why people think his name was...
No, this is freedom paper. What's up, Mace? Good morning, everybody. Good morning, baby. Marvin is back in the building. What up, Batman? What up, Mace? How you doing, boy? Better than I look. What's up, Mace? How you been, man? I'm chilling, man. All my cars still work. Just the pub doing good stuff, you know?
Yeah, every once in a while you got to do something good.
handled lightly, not out of favoritism, but because it's a liability storm. All right, Mace, this one frustrates a lot of people because Mace wasn't some distant figure. During the bad boy era, he was right there. Music, business, the inner circle, the entire machine. If anyone had real first-hand insight from that time, it would be him. But what fans can't get past is how quiet he's remained. People point to how long it took him to get out of his contract, years of paperwork, years of fighting to sort things out, and even after he got free, he never went full scorched earth in public. That silence is what fuels suspicion, because people expect someone with that much history to have more to say.
Diddy kept referencing it on air, trying to frame everything like it was already settled. Like, Mace is good now, he can do what he wants. But Mace's reaction is what everyone focused on. He looked nervous, surprised, almost overly grateful, like he didn't expect it to play out that way. Mace even said it plainly. It took him about 10 years to get the paperwork straight, and he sounded genuinely shocked that the publishing situation was finally resolved. Then he joked about it, basically saying, "Yeah, Puff did do good things sometimes." And that's why that moment sticks. When someone who was around for decades sounds surprised by a basic fair outcome, people take that as a sign the history wasn't simple. So why do viewers think Mace didn't really get a spotlight in the documentary? Because his silence changes the entire story. If you include Mace, the first question becomes, why is someone that close to that era still being so careful? And once you open that door, the documentary stops being a recap and turns into a deep dive about pressure, old business ties, and what people refuse to say out loud. That's why a lot of viewers believe the safer move was to leave him out, not because it proves anything, but because Mace would raise questions the documentary probably didn't want to carry. Now we've got to talk about Meek Mill, and yeah, this one gets messy fast. Meek has been around top-tier industry circles for years, and rumor culture has attached his name to different stories for a long time.
Real rap.
You think that audio that they put out was real?
Yeah, that was Nicki put that out there. That Nicki recorded that at the freak off in the Calabasas. She been waiting to drop that shit on Meek. She just wasn't gonna tell nobody it was Diddy. But now that Diddy out there, why not?
Mostly whispers, nothing solid. Then Orlando Brown popped up again with another outrageous line, clearly meant to go viral. After that, Meek publicly said he'd pay serious money to have things investigated, making it clear he has nothing to do with anything connected to Diddy. That response alone shows how fast rumors can spiral, and how hard it is to put the toothpaste back in the tube once the internet runs with a claim.
I'm not repeating it because it's explicit, unverified, and it turns the whole segment into shock bait. But this is how the pattern plays out. One outrageous quote gets clipped, and suddenly Meek's name is trending again. Then it escalated with an alleged audio clip that started circulating online. Some people claimed it involved Meek, and others insisted the second voice was Diddy. Jaguar Wright also jumped in, saying she believed it sounded like Diddy. But that's still her opinion. The key part is what happened next. The clip spread everywhere. People argued about it nonstop. And then it started quietly disappearing from platforms. That doesn't confirm anything, but it's exactly why the internet treated it like a bigger deal. So why would 50 avoid Meek and a Netflix documentary? Because that audio was never confirmed as real. If you put unverified, explicit material into a mainstream release, you're asking for legal trouble. And Meek is still active, still connected, and definitely not someone.
Y'all, paparazzi spoke to Bieber, and all he had to say recently was that, "Don't ask me about that man ever. Some things I moved on from for my own peace. What's in that documentary? Let's just say people are finally waking up." He also goes on to say, "I was a kid, I didn't know anything, I don't ever want to talk about that."
You casually name drop without airtight backing. Meek has money, a legal team, and the kind of profile where one wrong allegation can turn into a lawsuit fast. From a business standpoint, it makes sense why a documentary would steer clear of anything that can't be cleanly proven. If it isn't airtight, you don't gamble an entire release on it. All right, now Justin Bieber, and this one sits in a different lane. People don't bring Justin up like he's part of the problem. They bring him up because he was young around powerful adults, and those old clips still make people uncomfortable. There's footage of Diddy talking about having Justin around for a short period when Justin was still a teenager. Viewers read Justin's body language in those moments as someone who didn't look fully at ease. So why wouldn't the documentary lean into Justin? Because that instantly becomes a much heavier story. When someone was underage at the time, it stops being celebrity drama and starts touching on much darker territory. And if that person doesn't want to revisit it publicly, pushing it can look like exploitation. There's also been talk about paparazzi pressing Justin for a reaction. People have pointed out clips where paparazzi tried to pull comments out of him, and he clearly wanted no part of it. The way people describe his response is basically drawing a hard line. Don't ask me about that. I've moved on for my own peace. I was a kid. I didn't fully understand what was happening, and I'm not trying to relive it. Whether that's the exact wording or not, the message is clear. Justin doesn't want that chapter dragged back into the spotlight. So if 50 kept Justin out of the documentary, a lot of people see that as the most human decision possible. Pulling a grown man's childhood into a streaming headline cycle isn't exposure, it's reopening something he's clearly trying to leave behind. And now Justin has a family and a life he's building. He doesn't need his past turned into content. He doesn't need the world replaying it like entertainment. So if Justin was left out, many people see that as respect, not avoiding the story just to make the documentary hit harder. Next up is Usher, and people frame his story as an earlier chapter of the same conversation. Long before Justin, Usher was the young star everyone points to. The public narrative is that he was around Diddy as a teenager in those industry camp environments people still talk about. That's why online he's often described not as a villain, but as someone who was young inside a system run by older, more powerful figures. Usher himself has made comments over the years that fans interpret as hints that he saw things he can't unsee, things that changed how he moved later in life. He never spells it out, but he said enough for people to read between the lines. Then the conversation gets even more uncomfortable when people connect him to Justin's early career, saying Usher helped open doors and introduce Justin to industry circles. Online, some treat that like a decision he might look at differently now, given everything being discussed. So why would a Netflix documentary stay away from going deep on Usher? For the same reason it would avoid Justin. It's sensitive territory, and without solid verification and willingness from the people involved, it can quickly turn into exploitation. Katt's warnings about what the industry can do to young talent fit right into this theme, the idea that gifted kids can get pulled into situations that mess them up. But that's not something a mainstream documentary can casually imply without rock-solid backing. You'll also hear people claim an Usher segment was cut because it was too dark to include.
That's not something we can state as fact, but it explains the logic fans use. If a story involves a star's teen years and heavy implications, platforms are going to move extremely carefully, and Usher has a lot to protect. He's an R&B legend with a long career and a family. Dragging him back into this in a graphic way would ignite a media storm around his name. That's exactly the kind of fallout producers try to avoid. Usher has kids now and a legacy tied to his name. Pulling him into this conversation in a heavy way would turn his life back into headlines overnight. So if 50 left him out, many people see that as the safest move, not feeding the internet another target when the topic is already loaded. Now we get to the big one, the name people treat like it matters more than anyone else on the list, Clive Davis. Most viewers don't recognize that name the way they recognize artists, but in the music business, he's been around forever. He's the kind of executive with decades of influence and deep connections. That's why people call him a gatekeeper, not because he's on camera, but because he's tied to major careers and major industry moves over a long period of time. Some people go even further and suggest Diddy couldn't move without Clive's approval. That's an opinion, not something you can prove, but it shows what they're getting at. They believe the real power isn't always the artist everyone sees, it's the system behind the artist. They point to Clive's long history, his relationships across labels and media, and the way certain names seem insulated by influence alone. Then they tie it back to Katt's worker versus boss idea. The public focuses on the face, while the bigger power stays off screen. So why would a documentary avoid going anywhere near Clive? Because once you start naming legacy power figures, it's not just controversy, it becomes corporate risk. If you can't back every line with proof, that's the fastest way to get a project challenged, delayed, or softened before it ever reaches an audience. That's why people online boil it down to one word: fear. A cleaner way to say it is liability. Viewers argue that if a Netflix doc went straight at a legacy power figure like that, the rollout wouldn't survive. Not because of some movie-style conspiracy, but because big platforms, big networks, and big partners don't like unpredictable heat. When risk spikes, promotion gets quiet. Distribution gets complicated, and projects get watered down or stalled. That's why some people believe 50 kept Clive out not to be polite, but because naming him directly would have turned the entire documentary into a corporate liability fight before it even had a chance to breathe. And in that framing, leaving him out becomes the biggest omission of all, because people say the public keeps staring at the headline name while the larger structure stays untouched.
The idea that Clive built the system is still opinion, not proven fact, but it explains what people mean when they say taking down one figure doesn't change much if the power network behind the scenes remains protected. So there it is, the 7 names people believe were either left out or handled carefully in the Netflix Diddy documentary. Katt Williams told everyone something like this was coming. Some things would surface, but the biggest names would remain harder to touch. From Snoop Dogg to Clive Davis, these are the names people point to when they talk about how deep the protection runs. And if you want more breakdowns on how these stories get shaped, what's emphasized, what's avoided, and why certain narratives make it to air while others don't, check out Mike Trip. He breaks down the media mechanics behind these stories better than most. Now I want to hear from you. Which name do you think should have been addressed directly in the documentary? And do you think 50 made the right call keeping it clean, or should he have gone all in no matter the consequences? Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.